So the multiplicative identity. In the latter part of Module 2, the multiplicative identity will be important. So what is the multiplicative identity then? Well, Larry, can you please stop that? Thank you. All right, so the multiplicative identity is important because if I have any number, A, and I multiply it by its multiplicative inverse, which I can write as the reciprocal value, A times 1 divided by A, or 1 over A, then what I get is 1, okay? Now, this part may look really new, but what this says, basically, because we've mentioned before that division is multiplication of a reciprocal. All right, what this means is that this statement right here is absolutely the same as saying A divided by A is equal to 1. And any number divided by itself equals 1. This may look foreign, but 2 divided by 2, okay, 2 objects split into 2 groups, each group will have 1 object, or 2 over 2 is a whole. Students recognize this as a whole. 2 over 2 is equal to 1. All right, well this statement right here, 2 divided by 2, is exactly the same as saying 2 times 1 half. If I take something which has a size of 2 and split it into, or cut it in half, then each piece will have a size of 1. Okay? Think about your Kit Kat bar. All right? If a Kit Kat bar has 4 pieces, and you break each of those 4 pieces off and split it into 1 out of the 4, then each of those pieces is the size of 1 piece of the Kit Kat. Okay? So 4 pieces divided into 4 groups. Each group has 1. All right? So that's your Kit Kat bar. Split into 4 pieces. So here we represent the process of multiplication by a reciprocal. All right, 4 divided into 4 pieces. Each piece is one of those. All right, so 4 divided by 4, 1, 4 groups of 1. All right, so similarly then, I could say 4 divided by 2. If I snap this in half, then I'm going to have 2 groups of 2 Kit Kat sticks. All right, this is exactly the same as saying 4 times 1 half equals 2. So these 2 statements are the same, okay? The operation indicated here is division. The operation indicated here is multiplication by a reciprocal. It is the reciprocal of 2. So what does that have to do with the multiplicative identity then? This is right here, right here. If I have a number, it's reciprocal, and I multiply them together, I get 1. All right, so this is an identity that says a number multiplied by its reciprocal equals 1. Or the other way that we refer to this number is the multiplicative inverse. All right, so the multiplicative inverse of A is 1 over A. The multiplicative inverse of 2 is 1/2, because the product of 2 and 1/2 gives me 1. All right, so the multiplicative identity element then is 1. Because that's what I get. That is the product of any number and its multiplicative inverse. And this is very important. It's very important because a lot of times we can use the multiplicative identity element to do things like help us to make a common denominator when we need to do addition or subtraction with fractions. So I can always multiply by the multiplicative identity element because the product of the multiplicative identity element and any number is just that number again. It should do. All right. We know that 1 multiplied by a number is just a number. Okay, in a concrete example, 1 times 2 equals 2. All right, and similarly then, we can say that 1 times 1 equals 1. This is the only 1 is the only number that is its own multiplicative identity element. Every other number has a reciprocal, but because 1 is equal to its own reciprocal, then we can multiply 1 by itself and get the additive or get the multiplicative identity element. So some folks will immediately say, well, what about 0 times 0 equals 0? All right, this is a true statement. 0 times 0 equals 0. But remember that 1 is the multiplicative identity element. 0 times 0 is not equal to 1, it's equal to 0. 1 times 2 equals 2. Let's see, go back to 2 times 1/2 equals 1. Any number A multiplied by its multiplicative inverse is equal to 1. All right, so 0 times 0 is 0, which means that it is not its own multiplicative inverse. The only number that is its own multiplicative inverse is 1, because 1 times 1 equals 1, and we call 1 the multiplicative